la la la. Einsam wandelt ein Freund im Frühlingsgarten, mild vom lieblichen Sommerlicht umflossen. So, yeah, well, here we are, talking about stuff. Sorry it's been so long, I've been traveling, and I haven't had really good equipment to record on, and I know that's a stupid excuse, but in some ways I kind of feel like I said everything I needed to say in all of my lessons there, but still things are worth reiterating as it turns out. Thank you to those of you who reached out for lessons and all your comments and everything. Super helpful, and I love it. It gives me something to respond to and work with. I could talk about just kind of the things I'm encountering currently with students who've reached out for lessons, and of course students I've worked with, in the past. But currently, what is the challenge? What is like the major challenge that most of us face? And I would say for men, funny that I'm touching my jaw. For men, it's a lot of tension in the jaw and the tongue, and that's true for a lot of people in general. It's very difficult as English speakers, especially, to get out of that zone of gripping here with the tongue. It's the way we make our language. In English, especially American English, and this is probably true of Canadian English too, maybe not as much British or Australian or New Zealand, where they kind of speak up a little higher in general, and they speak a little brighter. We as Americans, you can hear in my voice, speak in a rather dull way. And if you're not trained, you might not notice that. But it's very different if I were to speak up here, as a lot of languages do, like, hey, pasta, fagioli, ah! French, German, Russian, oftentimes, a lot of them speak in a very bright way. And that's true for a lot of languages in the world, a lot of cultures. So how, as an English speaker, do you do that? You have to train. So you have to train a little bit of disengagement here and opening up resonators. So I'm finding this to be a challenge with beginner students of mine, and yeah, so that's a challenge for a lot of English speakers, especially. Now, foreigners, you might not have as much problem with here. As a matter of fact, I have another student who's so dialed into this like pingy bright place, and it's amazing. But then it's possible also in that case to lose your grounding. And as I was practicing today, even I've been doing this for a very long time, even I forget about that. I don't hear myself. We don't hear ourselves as singers. We don't hear ourselves very well inside of ourselves. So even today I was practicing, and the quality wasn't feeling really good, and on my phrasing I wasn't really able to make the kind of phrasing that I wanted to. My top wasn't really as secure. Everything was kind of in and out. And I realized, I recorded myself and listened to myself and realized like, oh yeah, like I am not on my body as much. So we've talked about that. I've talked about that in previous videos and in previous lessons, the importance of being connected here. Getting on the body, this idea of support. Yeah, the Italians call it appoggio, and I love that word, appoggio, which means to lean, because it literally is a kind of leaning into your body. If you were to put your hands around your solar plexus and your ribs, your lower ribs, where your diaphragm is, and then you send air, and you connect that to some voice, of course, eventually, and what you find is that there's an expansion happening. There's a certain amount of resistance. It's what they refer to as the lean, the appoggio. And that's support. Yeah, that's resistance of the air, and essentially what it accomplishes is it pressurizes the air. It gives you air pressure, which is more aggressive and more pressurized than just, which is just letting the air go. I take my breath, my stomach goes directly in, there's no resistance, it just comes straight out. And you can't sing on that kind of air. You need to sing on pressurized air. And this also gives you the ability to reach high into your resonators, to activate through the nasal pharynx, your nasal cavity, which is where the bulk of your quality, the bulk of your vocal quality lives. Ha, 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 higher, higher, ha. And you get a lot of power this way, which comes from here to here. And our job as singers, especially you American speakers, and I'm pointing at myself when I say this, is getting this out of the way, yeah? Getting tongue and jaw released. Now, tongue does have to work, of course, but it needs to not be gripped in here, yeah? Can get laryngeal, you can control with those muscles, but not extremely well. And it will limit your quality tremendously. It won't age well, trust me. I know from experience, because I've done it, and it didn't work. So, what are we talking about today? What are we talking about today? I would love to know from you kind of what you're working on. If you want to comment and tell me things that I should talk about. I know we've had comments in the past, and it's so helpful for me as far as the content is concerned. But instead of telling you what I see, maybe it's useful for you to tell me what you're working on. So I'm tired today, and I don't really feel like singing. So I'm going to look at a video. So I found this guy who I really like. Yeah, I found this singer that I really like. I'm just sending this to a friend. Okay, so I want to react to this guy's video. So what does it mean? What does it sound like to be dialed in, to be connected in the body and resonating high, getting height and brightness on the tone? What does that mean? What does it sound like? What does it look like? Let's have a look at this guy. What is his name? I don't know this guy's name, and I'm gonna have to give him a shout out. He's great. He is clearly an amateur, I think, but it's a very good sound. Let's just have a listen. Let's have a listen to this guy. Vieni alla finestra, oh mio tesoro, vieni a consolare il pianto mio. Se neghi a me di dar qualche ristoro, davanti agli occhi tuoi morir voglio. So you hear the kind of vieni alla finestra. Hey, it's present, it's vibrant, it's rich, it's a gorgeous sound. And you know, it could be more musical, I mean, if I'm being absolutely picky, but honestly, this is just a great sound. It's connected, it rings, it's got this kind of old school quality. I just love this guy. I just found him today. I'm gonna have to give him a shout out. But anyway, for all you students out there who are studying the Italianate method, this is it right here. It's a really good demonstration by a fairly good singer, and I'm sorry I don't know more about him. So I'll give him a shout out, see if he responds, or see if we can figure out more about him. Yeah, great demonstration there of chiaroscuro sound, of connected sound. Yeah, don't know what else to say. So how do you achieve that? How do you get there? So obviously our physiologies are all different. You know, the shape of your head, your vocal tract, all of these things, they make a big difference in terms of the quality of the sound you're able to get, the amount of power, the amount of whatever, the amount of capacity you have, let's say. But we all can use a kind of a similar approach, which is what I talked about in all my previous videos, which is connected. This idea of blowing steam, this idea of resistance downward. And then connecting that to a high place, I think of it as catching sound like a catcher's mitt right here. Whereas if you were to blow steam, you can feel it at your soft palate. You can feel your uvula kind of catch. You can catch that air. So that air translates into sound when you connect it to sound. So you start with air, body is working, and then you turn that into sound, and you can kind of like yell a little bit, almost like grunt, but importantly, we're not letting this go into the throat. We're releasing releasing into here. And it's not fully released because you're sort of encouraging high palate, which catches you, catches air, catches sound. Ha, 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 ha. De viene alla estra, oh mio tesoro, de vieni a consolare il pianto mio. And for that sustained kind of phrasing, I am doing this. like a lion, it's like a roar almost, but it's contained within. Yeah, and this creates tremendous, it creates internal pressure is essentially what it is. It creates this kind of excitement and pressure that's within, and that translates to a lot of excitement, a lot of color and vibrancy of your tone. And this is what we have with this guy, and he's great. I'm so glad I found him. So yeah, that's it. There are so many ways to get into that space, but this is kind of the basic idea. And this video will just serve as a reiteration of the point, because I'm sure I've said it all before, but I would love you to reach out. This technique really, it works for all types of singing. You know, the difference in classical singing versus pop singing is not as much as people think. You know, the quality is very different. Obviously, the effect is very different. The main difference is really laryngeal position. In pop music, you have oftentimes high larynx. In classical music, you make space. You have lower laryngeal position, and you create more distance between palate, basically palate position, and laryngeal position, and that's what creates chiaroscuro. That's what creates, first of all, height on the voice, which can translate into bright, depending on exactly where you put it. You can place that in a different way. You can place it forward, you can place it vertically, but importantly, both are up, and the result is bright generally. But the way to create dark is with a lower laryngeal position, which, once you're really dialed in here, is more or less just a relaxation and an opening. And people do talk about how to keep that free. I did talk about a low larynx and the importance of a low larynx in a previous video. And this is important to realize that it should be free. So yeah, please get in touch. Tell me what is troubling you. What are you struggling with in your voice? And let's talk. Thanks, guys.